Hello and welcome to Bourbon Rocks. Tonight we're going to review Rock Hill Farms, another single barrel bourbon from Buffalo Trace's Mash Bill number 2, which remember is the higher rye mash bill. I think more medium rye, but it's higher than Mash Bill number 1. And it's the product that's owned by the Japanese but produced by Buffalo Trace. So in Mash Bill number 2 you have the classic, the standard bearer of all Mash Bill number 2, which is of course the venerable Blanton's. We all know Blanton's. We also have Elmer T. Lee and Rock Hill Farms. We just reviewed the Elmer T. Lee. We've reviewed a number of Blanton's from the original single barrel, which was the first single barrel from 1984, through the Takara Red, which is only sold in Japan and is about 2 years older, to Blanton's Gold, which is about 10 proof points higher than the original Blanton's, and all the way up to Blanton's Straight from the Barrel, which is the barrel proof version, and that gets up into the 120 proof range plus, depending on the barrel. And as we all know, you can watch some of the previous videos that we've done. The Straight from the Barrel is exceptional, fantastic bourbon. The Blanton's Gold is also extraordinarily good. Takara Red, pretty good. And I just love the original Blanton's single barrel. It gets a lot of hype. A lot of people kind of rag on it, saying, oh, you know, it's overhyped. But I absolutely love Blanton's. I think it's a very, very good bourbon. Not incredibly exciting, not a lot of unique flavors, pretty much just a standard bourbon, but as about a perfect example of a standard bourbon done as exceptionally well as you can possibly do. So I love Blanton's. We did Elmer T. Lee. And I thought it was a little bit of a disappointment, one of the more overhyped bourbons from Buffalo Trace. So we're going to see how it compares, both those compare to the Rock Hill Farms. Now, the difference with the Rock Hill Farms is this one is bottled at 100 proof. The Elmer T. Lee was bottled at 90 proof. The original single barrel Blanton's is at 93 proof. Blanton's Gold at 103, and again the Straight from the Barrel up into the 120 proof range. This is 100 proof. Also, the Blanton's are all aged in the metal clad warehouse H at Buffalo Trace, which does lead to a little longer aging, or well, it leads to a faster aging process. Excuse me. So Blanton's is around a 6 to 8 year bourbon, but it tends to age, presume a little, or tastes as if it was aged a bit more because of that metal clad warehouse H. Elmer T. Lee and Rock Hill Farms, I'm not sure what warehouse they're aged in, but presumably not warehouse age. So once again, Rock Hill Farms is coming in at 100 proof. This one again is another non-age stated bourbon, as all of Mash Bill number 2 is. So you really kind of just have to guess at the age based on reports from the internet. This one's reportedly around 8 years, most likely. It could be up to 10 years, but we're going to say it's about 8. So it may just be a little bit longer aged than the original Blanton's, probably closer to the Takara Red, which is the Japanese only version of the original single barrel Blanton's. So Rock Hill Farms, somewhere around 8 years of aging, bottled at 100 proof. Also from Mash Bill number 2 from Buffalo Trace. Let's see what Rock Hill Farms tastes like. It's a great bottle, by the way. It's almost like a decanter bottle, so that's kind of unique among the Buffalo Trace products. So definitely gets a high score on bottle design. You could probably save this and put something else in it later if you wanted to. You know, people do that. I've got a Pappy 25 that comes in a Glencairn crystal. I actually have a Louis the 13th cognac that comes in a Baccarat crystal. And you can use those later and put something in it. But the problem is they're marked and labeled as what they used to be. So I don't really know why you put something else in it. It's not a plain decanter. Some people sell those on eBay for hundreds of dollars after they're finished. Maybe that's what I'll do. We'll see. Anyway, but this is a pretty cool bottle. All right, so we look at the color. Now I noticed that even though this is a higher proof and a bit longer aging than the Elmer T. Lee, I find it actually to be a little bit lighter in color. I think it's a little more of a straw, yellowish amber, a lighter color than I would expect given it a higher proof and a longer aging. The body is again about a medium body. It's about the same as the Elmer T. Lee. We'll do the nose again in our Glencairn glass. All right, so first thing hits me is similar to the Elmer T. Lee. I get a little apple. Now in the Blantons, I didn't really get apple. In Blantons, if there's a fruit in Blantons, it's going to be cherry, like most of the Buffalo Trace. But with Elmer T. Lee and the Rock Hill Farms, both of them, I've gotten some apple initially, and there's the caramel. There's the corn. This is not as grainy as the Elmer T. Lee. You definitely can tell that this one's aged longer. The Elmer T. Lee, we thought was about 5 years. It used to, I think, be a 9-year bourbon, but increasingly it's getting younger and younger as Buffalo Trace can't keep up with the demand based on the stock they have. And so Elmer T. Lee is kind of getting younger, and I think the reason why it doesn't live up to its hype. This smells to me a bit older, and it presumably is based on reports. But I don't get as much graininess. There is some corn in there, but it's not as grainy. There's very little in the way of spice. And it's not really even that sweet either. It's almost maybe more of like a butteriness, like a buttery popcorn, buttered popcorn even. I get that almost like I'm at the movies. Yeah, should put this in a flask and take it into a movie theater and drink it with some buttered popcorn. All right, so let's see what we get on the palate. There's the sweet. Sweet wasn't there on the nose, but the sweet comes at you on the palate. A lot of caramel there, toffee. There's a little bit of cherry now coming through that I never saw in the Elmer T. Lee. And I get a lot more in the Blantons, but this is getting a little bit closer now to the Blanton's profile. Caramel, cherry, the vanilla, a little bit of allspice. Blanton's, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I've mentioned this in multiple videos, that everyone should have Blanton's, in their cabinet, a couple of bottles. It is worth the hype. It is a very, very good bourbon. I know that it sells out fast, but for good reason. It's not exceptionally interesting. I'm never going to say that you're going to find some wild flavors in Blanton's. It's your typical oak, vanilla, caramel, maybe a little cherry. Not a lot of interesting flavors, but it is perfectly well done. All of the typical flavors you want in bourbon are going to be found as exceptionally well done as can possibly be. The most perfect example of an ordinary bourbon. That's my description of Blanton's, always has been. I stand by that. I've said it a million times. So when I get a mash bill number 2 bourbon like Elmer T. Lee or Rock Hill Farms, I'm going to try to compare that to that. This is getting closer to that sort of perfection of Blanton's. It's still a little bit thin. It doesn't have quite the depth and richness of the Blanton's, but it's much better than the Elmer T. Lee, which again, in my opinion, is one of the most overrated of the Buffalo Trace products. That was just way too thin. There just was not enough, depth of flavor. This is a much deeper flavor, a lot more of that vanilla and caramel, and there's that tad of cherry that you do see with the Blanton's. Some powdered sugar, almost maybe even just a little bit of white chocolate too. So I'm liking this a whole lot more than the Elmer T. Lee, but I still think it just falls a tad bit short of the Blanton's. Let's see what else we can get on a second taste and see how the finish goes with this. Again, this is a lot sweeter than the Elmer T. Lee. Similar to the Blanton's. That medium finish reminds me of those little Those little, I love those little caramel cream candies. You know those little round caramels that have that little white center, that kind of creamy, sugary white center. Caramel creams, I think they call them. That's totally what, I get out of this. Not much fruit on the finish. The cherry faded away. It's pretty much just caramel and that sugary, sweet, powdery goodness. So, I mean, this is a good bourbon. How to rate it? Blanton's is a queen. The gold and the straight from the barrel, I gave a king, because those are very, very good. Straight from the barrel is absolutely amazing. Took the regular Blanton's down to a queen. I gave Elmer T. Lee a jack. It doesn't rise to the level of Blanton's. It was more of a daily drinker if you remove the factor of its access and lack of acquirability, if you will. Same thing goes with this Rock Hill Farms. I'm going to give it a Jack 2. If there was such a thing as a Jack Plus, it's better than the Elmer T. Lee, but I'm still going to keep it about that level of a daily drinker. I don't think it rises to the elevation of the Blantons. Again, once we get into other distilleries, I think my concept of what a daily drinker is going to get a little bit easier to explain. Right now, I'm telling you, like, if you removed the hype of Buffalo Trace, maybe someday as Buffalo Trace finishes, their $1 billion expansion, all the rickhouses they're building, starts producing more bourbons, and bourbons like this end up on the shelves of any liquor store, and you can just walk in and buy them at list price, then these will be daily drinkers. It's kind of hard to say that now because they're so hard to acquire, unless you win the lottery, and even that's not going to happen very often. Drops aren't going to happen very often. I doubt you're ever going to walk in and find a box being opened. You can find them on the internet. Secondary internet prices are going to be significantly higher, way higher than you should pay for. Neither the Elmer T. Lee nor the Rock Hill Farms, in my opinion, are worth the internet price. They don't live up to that hype. But this one's closer. It's better. But someday, if this stuff ever gets back to being available, the way it was 10 years ago, I would call this a daily drinker. It's an easy one to say. I mean, it's got all nice flavors to it. It's not as rich and as full as the Blantons, full flavored as the Blantons, but it's much better, richer, and more full flavor than that Elmer T. Lee, which is just a little bit too thin. But it's a daily drinker. It's a Jack. And it is another single barrel bourbon from Buffalo Trace in the mash bill number 2. This is Rock Hill Farms. Check it out, and check us out on bourbonrocks.com. Thank you very much.